All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Our first item is the roll call.
Mr. Chu is excused. Ms. Douglas is excused. Mr. Hamilton.
Here.
Ms. Hetland.
Here.
Mr. Jacobson is excused. Ms. Makovsky is excused. Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Ms. Salmon.
Here.
Ms. Waller.
Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I actually have one
Okay.
addition. We have one more 2013 Urbana Arts Grants presentation tonight, which is the ACT UP Youth Theater. So that'll make
Okay.
5 presentations.
And where would you like that to occur, at the end or
Just in between item D and E,
D and E?
so
Okay.
after Remaking Matters and before my
Gotcha.
staff.
Okay. All right, very good. Next, we need to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Did anyone have any corrections or changes to those minutes? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Okay. I think we all approve. Aye? Okay. All right, let's move ahead then. There's no public input, correct? Or is there?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Then let's move ahead to communications. We're going to have a lot of art grant presentations tonight. First one is from the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra.
Can I turn this just a little?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
that I don't know probably what's on it. I've got a little askew.
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Joe Madden, and I'm the executive director of the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra. And this is my first year on the job, so I know that my predecessor was here to make these presentations before, and I'm delighted to be here now. I grew up in St. Louis playing violin in a music-rich household, and even so, my first experience at a symphony orchestra concert was at a youth concert in St. Louis with the St. Louis Symphony. And to this day, I will never forget the first time I heard more than one violin at once. I grew up playing one, and I will never forget what it sounded like when they first started playing together. So I think that these are really, really wonderful opportunities for students, and I'm really happy both for your support and for the chance to come talk to you today about last year's concerts. Before I get going too deeply, it's been a chaotic month in that we've had the 2014 youth concerts produced in April, this final report, and then just last week I was previewing the 2015 concerts at Krannert. So I've got about 3 different years of youth concerts rattling around in my head. And that too. And that too. So without further ado, I will launch into the 2013 youth concerts final reports. First, a bit of background about the orchestra, which many of you may know. The Champaign-Urbana Symphony was founded in 1959, so we're coming up on our 55th anniversary year. And the mission of the CUSO is to enhance the quality of life in the community by providing symphonic music of the highest caliber through live performances and music education in the schools, the concert hall, and the community. Naturally, these youth concerts are a critical part of the music education component of our mission. The Champaign-Urbana Symphony is designated officially as the professional orchestra in residence at the Krannert Center for the Performing Arts. However, the CUSO receives no funding from the University of Illinois or the Krannert Center. The youth concerts were known originally as the Kinder Concerts and Young People's Concerts, and they were first performed in 1964, which means I think then we're coming up on our 50th anniversary year this year for 2014. And one thing that we're very proud of is that these concerts are, in fact, performed by a full symphony orchestra, not a chamber group and not a small ensemble. And I say this past season, 2012-13, the CUSO presented 2 performances, and the theme of those concerts was classical power. The program was designed and conducted by Jack Ranney, retired University of Illinois professor. And television news personality Paul Davis narrated each performance to give students contextual information about the pieces and help lead them through the morning. Concerts were performed at 10 a.m. each day on April 10th and 11th of 2013. And over 3,100 students attended, which is a number that we're really thrilled with. During the 2012-13 season, we were in the midst of a conductor search. So our season performances were conducted by guest conductors and music director finalists, which is one of the reasons we were happy to welcome back longtime youth concert collaborator Jack Ranney, who programmed the concert conducted it and wrote all the narration for it. So we're really grateful for his support and his partnership, not only for this performance, but over the last few years. And he's pictured there with Paul Davis, who provided the narration. The program consisted of some works I imagine you'll be at least familiar with some of them. First was Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra, which is the famous music from 2001, in case you hadn't heard that before. The Gypsy Dance from Carmen, Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain, Johann Strauss Jr.'s Thunder and Lightning Polka, and two very powerful selections from the end of Pictures in an Exhibition, Baba Yaga, the Witch, and The Great Gate of Kiev. As you can see from the list, we had a pretty full roster this year. One thing that we were pleased with is that compared to the previous couple of years' programs, we had a larger orchestral force we could put on stage. Many more percussion players. Tuba was back. Students really like the tuba a lot. And we had harp back on stage and some bigger string and wind sections, and we were happy to be able to present a really full symphonic orchestra experience. I believe this is a list of either 30 or 28 schools, depending on the columns and which one I counted. Not listed here are several home schools that weren't part of a co-op, but that also came. And so these reach, as you can see, throughout Champaign County, Urbana-Champaign, and surrounding areas. A really important part of the youth concert experience is the educator's guide. To make this a truly educational and long-lasting experience, we don't want the students just to come in the morning and hear a concert and leave and remember some and not remember some other things. So we provide an educator's guide that's custom-made each year to inform not only about the orchestra, but about the pieces that they'll hear, and provide them with audio recordings as well, so that this can be something that stays with them, hopefully for life. The guide includes short biographies of the composers, introduction to the pieces performed, and information about the concert experience and concert hall etiquette and all that kind of thing. Every year we're really pleased with how good they are. And we also include descriptions and pictures of all the different instruments, the families of the orchestra, listening guides and worksheets to help guide their listening experience, and activity pages. So to sum up, we think that they're just an outstanding experience for, an outstanding opportunity for young people to experience the real power and beauty of a symphony orchestra performance, which is really something to behold if you haven't seen it live, in a world-class performance space. And we're, for that matter, very grateful to Krannert as a partner. And for so many of these students, it's the only avenue for them to experience such a performance. And we're really honored to give them that opportunity. And we're also happy to offer that chance to our musicians too, who really love doing this. Before I began my administrative work at the Symphony 4 or 5 years ago, I was a musician in the orchestra and I play violin, and so I've played in many of these youth concerts, including the ones last year, and I can tell you firsthand that it's just a wonderful feeling to hear how excited those children are. One of the biggest differences between one of the youth performances and one of our classical concerts is when you dim the lights at a classical performance, the room gets very quiet. Usually for a youth concert, when you dim the lights, the kids just start applauding and screaming and they get really excited. So it's a great feeling, but it's really, really fun for us too. So that is legitimately a great opportunity for musicians. I can tell you that firsthand. So we really believe that these are just a great program to enrich the lives of residents and visitors of Urbana. And we're really proud to present these in Urbana in the Follinger Great Hall at the Krannert Center. Naturally, community support is essential. The CUSO is a professional orchestra, and all musicians are paid for all of their services, and the budget for the 2013 youth concerts was just under $17,000. All funds received from the city of Urbana supported local performers, and that's something that we're also really, really proud of. Community partners are essential not just for financial support, but for the success of the concerts. In particular, we always want to make sure to thank the Robeson Family Benefit Fund. The University of Illinois School of Music Office of Outreach and Public Engagement not only has the longest name of any of our partners, but also provides a crucial role in enrollment management. Schools sign up for the concerts and are mapped to the appropriate time and date of performance through the University of Illinois School of Music. The Krannert Center for the Performing Arts. The Guild of the Champaign-Urbana Symphony provides the invaluable service of volunteer ushers to help, well, sometimes up to 1,600 or 1,700 students per performance find their way in and out smoothly, and that's an invaluable service that we could not do this without. The musicians of the symphony are, of course, a critical piece of the puzzle, and the Illinois Arts Council, and of course the Urbana Arts Commission, and we're very, very grateful for your support as we look to continue this excellent series. We have a new music director appointed as the result of that search, and we really enjoyed our youth performances this year, which I'll talk to you about in a subsequent final report, but we're really, really excited about the future of the youth series with our new conductors, with our new conductor, and with your support. So with that, I think I'll close it off and say thank you so much again for your support, and it's been a pleasure to be here.
Okay, thanks very much. Does anybody have comments or questions? Ginny?
Just say, I ushered these concerts. I'm one of those. And to see
Yes, she
these young children come in to the Krannert Center, maybe the first time, the only time they come to the Krannert Center for some children, and to be exposed to this, having had the training and the education ahead of time, they know what to look forward, they know their behavior and everything, they're very well behaved, and they sit and listen to that whole concert. There's no goofing off at all, you know. So every year I am so impressed that the concert does this and that our art supports it, because it's a wonderful experience for these children in Champaign-Urbana from all the different schools. It's tremendous, really.
I have to heartily concur. Having been a member of the orchestra for the last 30 years, and with my colleague Robin Kirton, who's a presenter later, but also a member, early member of this commission, I think we all have the same feelings when we play these concerts, how beneficial they are to our community. My only concern is, I know in certain years, because busing is an issue, would you like to address the problems that we have with some schools that would like to attend?
Yeah, sure. Challenges, that's a great question, because challenges are really bus transportation, and funding that can actually be, I'm told, a real challenge for some of the schools. And we've tried, in the past, grant support has been pursued to try to fund some additional classes from schools with, if I'm led to understand correctly, mixed results. But that's an area that we really would hope to be able to reach out to more and to provide transportation funding for some of these schools who might not have an opportunity to get there, whether it's through a grant or some other program. We would like to make that accessible for more.
Okay, well, thanks very much for your presentation, and it's great to hear that this long-running program is still doing well. Thank
It
you.
really is. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
All right, our next report is going to be from the Champaign-Urbana Film Society.
I know I'm looking for something. What am I looking for? Right here? I'm a Mac guy, sorry. There we go. So yeah, my name is Brett Hayes, and the CU Film Society was founded about 4 years ago. I'm one of the founding board members. We have a film production company locally called Shatterglass Studios, and a lot of the Film Society board is made up of local filmmakers and film supporters. Last year, or 2 years ago, we received a grant from the Urbana Arts that helped us tremendously with different workshops that we were doing. And then we had the idea of this Pins to Lens. Here's who the CU Film Society is. We're here to celebrate cinema, discuss great films. The main thing is we want to be able to empower young people. We want to be able to educate and give knowledge to people, young people especially, about filmmaking. And so the way we did it last year was through what we call the Pins to Lens K through 12 screenwriting competition. And so what we did was we launched it last year in February, and we wrote a curriculum. We wrote 3 curriculums. We wrote a K through 5, a 6 through 8, and a 9 through 12. And we gave those curriculums not knowing what to expect, but we gave it to teachers and superintendents and principals. And we said, we wrote a curriculum because we had met with teachers, and we said, all right, we want kids to write scripts. What do we do? And teachers said, you don't just tell kids to write, you have to show the teachers how to tell the kids to write scripts. So we sent it to them, and then we sent it to homeschool groups. And we didn't know what to expect. It was February 28th, And we were doing an event actually that day from last year's grant. It was a sound workshop, and we're like, everything comes in today, all the script, and we had 120 scripts. We thought we'd get 12. So we had 120 scripts that kids had submitted 5 pages or less. And so it really motivated us to realize that what we had was something good, that the teachers were teaching, the kids were getting it, and they were writing original scripts. Now, mind you, we had a couple One Direction scripts, which, they were still original content, but that was copyrighted. We're not going to make those. But yeah, we had some really great scripts, and so we found 9 local filmmakers to make those scripts into short films. And so we took the 9 scripts and we turned them into short films. Here was the guidelines that we had on our website for submission guidelines. So we had everything online for teachers to read the curriculum, for students to actually have a student curriculum that that we wrote in their language. For instance, like kindergartners, they didn't have to format the script perfectly, whereas a high schooler, we'd expect them to format it with, interior, exterior descriptions. So we had all that on our website, but then we started filming them. So this is Shatterglass. This is our team filming. So we had a full crew, and we invited the screenwriter to come out. Her name was Iona. She was a 10-year-old, and she wrote a fantastic script that we made. This was another one. This was the kindergarten class. This was the cutest film possible. It made no sense at all, but that's why it was great. Because you watch it and you're like, I remember being a kindergartner and not understand. I have a kindergartner myself, and the logic of buying a house for $1 and a cat was selling it. But it was just like being unfiltered and getting that unfiltered script. They were just golden. And so we, a bunch of filmmakers just made a bunch of scripts. This was an animated one right there. That's the writer. She actually starred in it as well. She's a 5th grader now at Southside. That's Iona. That was ours. And then we had a gala. And so we took all the films, and we also reached out to Kudo, which is the local design organization, and they had a great idea of making fake movie posters for some of the scripts that weren't chosen, as well as some of them that were. And they made about 50 posters. You can see one right there for Fluffy Stein. But we had a red carpet gala at the Art Theater. We had sponsors. We had BPC and Alex Ruggieri and Schwartz Chiropractic, and we also had obviously the grant money from the public arts. So it was a free event, and we in the back you can see here we had the photo set up where we had a photographer taking photos of everyone. Red carpet. All the posters were out. We had about 50 posters that were made, fake posters, and then we had the screening inside. So you can see some of the posters there. We had 400 people come. Unfortunately, we had to tell people not to come because the Art Theater only has so many seats, and so we just had to tell people, the students and the teachers and the parents we have to let them in. So we were telling a lot of people, come to an encore screening an hour and a half later. We had Matt Metcalf that emceed the whole event, and we gave awards and to students. But it was all about the students. The filmmakers, they made the films for the students. It wasn't a competition on the films. Nobody judged the films, and nobody said one was better than the other. It was always about the writing that the kids did and the validation to them as writers, and that's why we had the red carpet for them. The filmmakers were barely meant, it was this filmmaker made this. It was this kid is the one that did it. So we had, these were the actors, and we had it was 2 full shows. And here's some of the films: Tunnel to Greenland, Super Duper Low, The Devil Uses Purell, Dinner Party Antics, Even a Nod, Into the Mine, Susie and Daisy's Adventure, Episode 1, Fluffy Stein. And here's some of the posters that were made. And then we got a ton of press. And so we had a lot of articles. We had the news come out. And really the best thing was we heard from the kids afterwards, and we said, what was, or we talked to teachers and parents, and they said, my kid, it validated to my kid that they can be a writer, or they can be an artist, or that they can be a filmmaker, or that they could, whatever it was. And we're hearing people saying, my kid now is motivated to write. My kid is now motivated to become a film. They've always had this dream, but nobody validated it. And so it was a validation. This year we're doing it again. And we got 150 submissions, and we're making over 20 films this year. And it's just been, it was really, what I said last year at the art grant, getting the grant, it was kind of one of those, like in Saving Private Ryan when he says, earn this at the end. Getting the grant 2 years ago was that moment for the Film Society where you guys said, here, and we're like, we got to earn this, And so Pens to Lens, we are really excited about what the grant did to launch that, because we made it free to the public. We made it all about the kids and all about the education. And so, yeah. And then another thing we did was we did an assistant, I did not spell directing correctly. That was, okay. Assistant directing workshop. It was a free workshop. We had a first AD from Chicago come in, and we had over 50 people come. But this was teaching how to schedule a film and how to break down a script. But this was more for local filmmakers. But a free event that we did at the Shatterglass offices. So that's what I have.
Okay, any comments? Kevin?
Brett, did you get any chances to talk about this elsewhere nationally? I mean, Shatterglass and others in the Film Society, they're involved in a lot of spheres.
I've talked about it. We did every time I make a film, we're doing one right now, I always mention to the filmmakers, like we had on this last film I did in Chicago, we had Steve Lemmy from Super Troopers, and he was one of the writers and actors, and I was telling, he's like, this is they need to do this in LA and New York and others. And we've actually, I talked to Kathy Byrne at SAG in Chicago, and she has made some of the productions this year a SAG production, so we can use union actors. And she's like, this is something we should do next year in Chicago. And then we've had some communication with some film critics that we know through Ebert Fest and whatnot. And we've got some exciting, some have said they want to do like fake reviews and put it on the national scene for some of these kids. Whether that happens or not, I think it's an excellent concept that could go nationwide in other cities. I don't think we want to necessarily manage those, but for us to give the idea and to give, to license the name or whatever it is, I think it's something that we'd love for people to duplicate and use our curriculum or write their own.
Are the videos online, or is that?
They're all online,
Okay.
yeah. So the videos are all on penstolens.com and YouTube, so you can see all the films there. And then CI Living played them all and had all the kids on there, and then 2 PBS stations played them.
I ask about the national just because sometimes it seems like Champaign-Urbana is always in a position of saying, well, we have that too. We have a Pachacacha. We have a Martini Bar, whatever it is that makes us micro-urban.
Right.
But I mean, I think, but this is a really amazing contribution that nobody else has, and I'd love to see more people know about it.
Yeah, I would too.
Great work.
I think it's there. I think last year our main goal was prove it. Prove that we can do this on our own without. I mean, we had help. We had the grant. And we had local businesses, but without saying we need to partner with a big organization or we need to have, Roger Ebert's name attached or something like that, just to say we can do this. We can self-motivate and get kids involved in all this. I think we need to prove it, and I think we need to do it a couple times before we can say this is duplicatable.
Right.
And I think this year we're using it to say we can do it twice. We can make it better, get more involvement, et cetera, et cetera.
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know if you'd be interested, but there is a local connection to Legendary Entertainment who's from Champaign-Urbana, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with the Vice President of Creative Affairs and see if he might be able to help you launch something on that level.
That'd be amazing.
Since this is his hometown.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay.
It'd be fantastic.
Okay, well, it's a fantastic program.
thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
report. Thanks.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, our next report is going to be on the Community Center for the Arts, the Ray Street Bash.
Hi, I'm Robin Kierton. I'm the director of the Community Center for the Arts, and I'm here to talk to you about the report on the funding of the Ray Street Bash. C4A is our kind of shortcut name, and our mission is to strengthen the community through shared experiences with the arts, and one of the ways we do that is music education. Other ways that we do that are providing free to the public events like the one that was funded by this grant. As we find ourselves midway through our 8th season, we can look back, we've got 21 professional musicians who are all passionate about teaching, and about 250 students a week walk through our doors. And since we moved to our current location at the corner of Race and Main in 2012, we've gotten to be friendly with our neighbors, and I think they're pretty happy about all of the students who go out to eat after their lessons every week and go for coffee. Well, you know, I think that this is kind of a classic example about how access to the arts also enriches the local economy, and that's one of the things that we hope to keep working on. And you know, the local merchants are super cooperative with us with this street fair too, and I think it's a nice partnership that we've got going. We're really happy about all the support that we receive, both from the Arts Commission and from our constituency, the community at large. So the Ray Street Bash is one way that we give back. What the Ray Street Bash is a community-based street fair, and it's intended to highlight and celebrate local arts. Our goal is that it's participatory as much as it can be, and that it's inviting and fun, free, open to all ages. And so then our next goal is, how do I do this? This? Yes. Okay, good. So, you know, balloons and face painting, if you want kids around, you can't go wrong. Tell them that you're going to paint faces and they'll line up for hours. But then once you get them there, we had all these things that were more participatory that they loved it. I mean, some of the stuff was just as easy as a bucket of bubbles or water balloon wars that lasted, you know, squeals of delight. But we also had participatory things in the visual arts. We had a big bucket of chalk, and they just decorated the sidewalk beautifully. And we had temporary murals put up so they could, you know, group painting. And I noticed some rather old children participating in that. So that was a nice thing. We also had we invited some of the local artisans to display their work, and many of them had elements. One of them showed her stained glass work, but she also had little stained glass workshop things that the kids could do and come and pick up later. We had a lot of workshops in general. We added an element of performance art to this because it's a street fair after all, and these kids are getting instruction on something that they're about to try. I was kind of busy, so I didn't get to see everything that they were doing. We had street performers, professional musicians. Michael Braswell was juggling, and his wife Satina was hooping all over the place. Some of our faculty members sort of spontaneously broke into song in the middle of the performance. That's Doug Schroer. They're blowing on his harp. This guy, we have him on board because he's a fantastic pianist, but I didn't know he was a juggler too. He just kind of broke into this. He just went up to the workshop table and started entertaining us with his juggling, and he actually opened the ceremony playing the didgeridoo. We had 40 volunteers. Volunteers were a really important part of this, the success of this event. And we did have about 40 of them helping us. They did set up, tear down. They assisted with workshops. They served complimentary refreshments. We had a popcorn and lemonade stand going that was pretty popular. And the grant that we got from the Arts Commission funded all the supplies for these activities. Naturally, we had live music. We had a giant, our stage was a big flatbed truck donated by Clem Farms. We had everything from our headliner, who unfortunately we didn't get a very good picture of it, and they would get mad if I put the picture up. So, but it was the Duke of Uke and his Novelty Orchestra was our headliner, and we chose them because they were local and because one of their band members was a violin instructor on our faculty at that time. This picture that you're seeing now is our young. I think this was one of their early performances of our new string academy for children. We had a faculty string band playing old time and traditional dance music. We had a set of jazz musicians. There you can see Dyke Corson on the pedal steel, and Dorothy Martirano is doing her newly found singing, and that's her son, Alex, playing the bass. He's not on our faculty. He was a guest musician. Music ensembles are the life force of C4A, and they create communities of their own. And in fact, the Bodacious String Band community is kind of what spawned C4A in the first place, just bringing all these people together. This picture shows members of the marvelous Cretaceous Band waiting to go on stage. And if you look at them, you can sort of, I mean, they all have instruments, so you can tell they have that in common, but they're a really diverse group of people. And these people they get together every week and play, and they are big pals. They just hang out and they like to play music together, and that's just one of our success stories. And it's just amateur adult musicians. They just get together, and they're real crowd pleasers too. Of course, we have to have Bodacious performing too. Altogether, we had 22 professional musicians on stage and about 80 student performers joining us. And the funding that we got from the Arts Commission funded paying for the professional musicians and the sound technician, which is a really key ingredient in this kind of endeavor. Members of the Bodacious String Band also ran an old-fashioned cakewalk with live music. And so you can see in the background a couple of people walking around in the circles, waiting to get their mostly either cupcakes or gift certificates for food. I know the Courier Cafe donated about a dozen milkshake certificates, and others, donated things to use in there. We did have our criteria for accepting any sort of vending was that it had to be a local merchant. So Pizza M sold some pizza slices, and the Courier Cafe promoted their things, and the artisans that we had were all local artists. Since we believe that music is a participatory art, we like to take every opportunity to help people try out music. And there's one thing that we call the Try It Tent. Now this picture here is not exactly what you would try to show most people for, it's not a really compelling picture until you understand what's going on in here. This is sort of the back view of our Try It Tent. And what you see here is we bring a bunch of instruments, and then we stock the tent with instruments and teachers. And you can just have some coaching on how to play the thing. You can get a tiny little lesson there. And some of the people are really into it. They're like, oh, I always wanted to play the cello. I'm sure you can't understand that. But, and it's funny. It's everyone from really young children to people fairly advanced in age. And they come up, it's like, I've never touched a violin. Have at it, and so we've sort of fulfilled some dreams right there on the street, and it's nice. We don't have it showing in the photos, but we also take our ukuleles and guitars and banjos, and this year we have pianos on the ground level, so they'll have to go inside because we're not going to wheel an acoustic piano out into the street, but we'll encourage people to go indoors and try out a piano if that's what they'd like to. This year, one of our youth corps volunteers came up with this idea. He said, well, why don't we have an electric Try It tent? And at first we all went, "Oh, good idea." It's like, but then I spoke with Dyke Corson about it, of Corson Music, and he said, "Oh yeah, they do. We can hook this up so that there's headphones so that they can hear exactly what they're doing, and it's you know." It'll be good because they can hear what they're doing. They won't be competing with the sound of the live music that's going on. And boy, was this a popular place. People lined up to try this out, and it was really great. And the youth volunteer who suggested it actually partnered with Corson. They got together and they talked about how it would work, and it was a really nice thing. And they're going to do it again this year, and they're already planning it, and they're recruiting their friends to help them run it, and so we'll have a bunch of high school aged volunteers staffing this tent. I think that's terrific. So as far as giving back to the community in a way that made the arts accessible, because it was easy to get to, because it was free, because it was all ages friendly, because it was participatory, we feel like this event was a success. We had over 800 people show up in a 4-hour span, and we're really happy about it. And we feel like events like this really help bring vitality to our downtown, which is part of what we would like to do. And with success like this, no wonder they were dancing in the street. So we'd like to just thank you for your support, and we look forward to future collaborations.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions?
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the presentation. Next, we have a presentation on remaking matters.
Hello, my name is Arenka Carney, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the Remaking Matters program. We're very small. It's kind of humbling hearing these programs that have been established for longer and have such large involvement. But we only started 2 years ago, mostly out of the trunk of my car. So I'm both humbled, but I'm also very proud of what we're able to do, and I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will feel similarly proud and excited about what we're able to accomplish this year. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what the program is and what we're about. Most of what I'll talk about will be walking you through what we accomplished this year, and then I'll bring it home by kind of focusing in on areas where the grant money had particular impact. So very quickly, our name and its perhaps slightly strange punctuation is meant to be sort of a creative synthesis of some relevant statements about what we do, which is we are remaking matter. And then what we believe, that both making matters, the act of making itself, and remaking, the act of reuse, is very important. And that's really just trying to cleverly get at the two core concepts that are at the heart of Remaking Matters, which is sustainability and accessibility in art. The reason we care about sustainability is probably rather self-explanatory with the age that we live in and how we need to be increasingly conscious of the impact that our activities have. And that really speaks to me, and it's part of why I got involved and kind of took the reins of this early on, is because I studied environmental science and then I moved on to art and design. So for me, it's a very natural union. And then the accessibility is, even though I'm sure most of us have heard a lot of information about how art and the participation in art and craft activities has so many positive impacts. It can stimulate the intellect. It can be emotionally healing. It can serve as a growth tool or social bonding activity. And it's just can be so validating on a core level, because the act of creating, of making something, is so integral to the human experience. And yet, for many people, it doesn't seem like a valid use of their time, whether there are practical limitations or they just feel like they have more important things to do, that they aren't allowed to take that time. So how do we go about achieving those two goals? The sustainability is rather straightforward. Our materials are mostly recycled, like the paper or plastic products that will break down and then reconstruct into new things from those raw materials, or they are repurposed. Objects that we're taking and without altering too much, we're just putting to a different purpose. Like when we take old overhead transparencies and turn them into screen printing stencils. Or a lot of our art materials are also just gathered organic material, like leaves and twigs and sticks that we use to what I think is very impacting effect, and obviously is a pretty low impact art material to use. And a lot of that sustainability goes into the accessibility too, because one of those biggest limitations that people can run into for art is the cost. A lot of the costs for the materials and tools for conventional art creating can be very expensive, and for some people it's either not reasonable or just not even feasible. And fortunately, a lot of that cost gets cut down just by using, old cans and leaves and sticks for our art supplies, and we try and use perhaps unconventional processes, kind of trying to simplify different art styles so that they can be done with simpler apparatus and at low cost and be very reproducible. Another limitation for accessibility is just the knowledge. You might feel like you have an inkling that I want to do something creative, but you might not know where to start. And even if the expense isn't an issue, even just taking the time or figuring out where to go to get that information can be very tricky. So we try to foster that accessibility to the knowledge, both by our classes being very much a group learning together. Teachers and students discovering and learning new ways to make these processes work well and teaching each other. And then we also try and use open source materials and instructions that we can make available on our website. So even if you miss the class, you can maybe try and figure out and do it on your own. And then another core area for the accessibility is we've been trying to network and with other similarly oriented resources and groups in the community. And we're very fortunate to have a community where we have places like the Idea Store, the Makerspace, the Fab Lab, the CoLab. Mm-hmm. And a big part of this class is on our website and at our events, getting information out. I can't tell you how many people that have had ideas tickling at the back of their brain didn't know there was a place like the Fab Lab where they could go and for little to no cost make these ideas a reality quite easily. So even when we're not actively teaching, we're trying to connect the people that get on our email list or go to our website with other resources in the community that can help just make this all accessible. So how did that translate to this year's programming? Our programming was multifaceted and mostly amounted to a series of classes, an art show, and then some other miscellaneous events. And I'm going to start by talking about the classes. I'm very proud of what we accomplished, but the classes were perhaps where we were the most, we had very lofty ideas about what we'd be able to achieve with these scheduled classes. We felt like after spending a year with practically no budget and no space of our own that we could achieve, just about anything. And we learned kind of the hard way that these regular classes were a little bit intimidating, even when we said on the posters that you didn't have to come to all of them, that you could just come to one, that people kind of saw that commitment as very restraining. So it wasn't as effective as some of our events that were more kind of one shot. But we still had about 8 regular students, and then sometimes we'd get people walking in off the street because we'd always have a sign out letting people know they're welcome to come in. And our first class was just simple collage. Most of our students are adults, and they need a lot more kind of icebreaker time than kids to feel okay getting creative. So we always start with a simple collage, as you can see. We have an example from one of our students there. And then we did some experiments with screen printing. And this is a close-up on one of the fabric prints that was made by taking overhead transparencies and old call numbers from dry cleaners or whatnot, the big plastic numbers using as the way to scrape the paint on. And we were able to cut out shapes out of this plastic and then print it on with the paint onto fabric without having to use the expensive and toxic chemicals normally used in screen printing. And that was one of the students' favorite activities. We had a couple classes about paper. One was just making our own recycled paper, and we experimented with shapes and colors. And you can see there's a circle of our recycled homemade paper that was then turned into a very simple, but I think effective, art craft. And then we had later classes where we were taking all that recycled paper and creating crafts with them. We did mixed media sculpture. This was one of my favorite ones, a cigar box that I think was turned into quite an interesting little accent. It looked very striking when we had it up in our show. And then we always have a lot of interest in doing jewelry and kind of also hacking clothing, fun ways to kind of take old clothing and turn it into jewelry or other objects like bags, or taking clothing and sprucing it up a bit. And then we also had educational material where we were just talking about where do you get your materials? Good places in town, like for example, if you want some high quality dry cardboard, the dumpster behind the food co-op. Get all the cardboard you need. Good places in town to gather interesting organic matter. I got to have my environmental science background come into play there. And also, if you are going to do something more ambitious like dumpster diving, how to do it safely. We want to make sure that we don't send people down a doomed path. And I mean, with the community like this, there are a lot of exciting dumpsters that one might be intrigued by. And we wanted to make sure people, especially if we had younger participants, knew that it's something you did with your parents, or if you're an adult on your own, that you're wearing the right clothing and everything. So the art classes amped up to our art show, which, unlike last year when we were graciously hosted by the Women's Resource Center at U of I, and our art show was squished in between cubicles and desks, we actually were able to rent out a space. And we were able to use the sunroom at the Independent Media Center. And it was very tempting to just show lots of pictures of the art as it was up in the space. But one of the things we did is for the opening and closing receptions, they were also art meetups. We got art supplies out and instructors on hand. So most of the pictures I'm about to show you are people that were making art at our opening and closing receptions. The woman here is Deborah Erickson, who we've had the pleasure of having as a student both years. She was with us from our humble beginnings. She was helping someone make some jewelry. And this gentleman spent a lot of time very concentratingly weaving yarn and interesting debris into some sort of interesting crochet art piece, which he then was inspired to actually make part of a drawing. And we gave participants the option to, if they finish an art piece, they could put it up and have it be part of the show and then gather it later. And this was a piece that we actually then put up on the wall. And he made this drawing on one of our pieces of recycled paper. This is a woman that made a dream catcher for her daughter, and then another woman who made a, I think, very snazzy hairpiece out of some wire mesh and beads. And it was just so great to have this space both be a place where the art could be on display in what felt in a very professional way, as well as a workspace for people to come together and create. Our other events included more last-minute art meetups, oftentimes that relied on just signage, inviting people to come join us from the street. Most of them were kind of amping up for the art show that we just talked about. Our biggest event is part of an ongoing partnership with Out of the Mouths of Babes. Last year, we had the fortune of having the children from Out of the Mouths of Babes come give press coverage of our little art show last year. And this year, we came to their family day, and we set up a table where they were able to see the different steps and how our recycled paper was made, which mostly consisted of the children sticking their hands in the buckets of paper pulp and saying that it was gross. And then we had a variety of collage resources out on the table for them to use. And I do have to apologize that these pictures aren't better. We learned a lot this year, and one of the things I learned was when you have someone being kind enough to volunteer their photography services, get copies of those photos before they go on vacation and have a chance to lose their camera. So we've pieced together what we can to show what we're able to do, but the photos aren't as representative as we hoped. But at this family day, a variety of different mixed media collages were made by the children and their parents, and it was one of my favorite events. It really showcased why I have to say I'm always more worried about reaching out to adults with this program. I love the children that are involved, but the adults, I almost feel like, I really worry for them and their ability to let themselves feel empowered to do art. They need a lot more coaxing. And in our classes, they need a lot of direction. And these kids, all you have to do is put materials in front of them, and they just go for it. And I loved seeing, the different personalities of these children come out in this act of creation. The blue collage was a young girl that was too small to use scissors, but had a very clear idea of what she wanted, which was sweetly to make a thank you note to give us for letting her make the thank you note that she was giving us. And she directed her father with intense precision and an exacting eye to put every piece that he cut out for her exactly where she wanted it. The piece below it, a young boy spent about 40 minutes trimming that heart to be the shape he wanted and positioning it exactly on that scrap. And it's very minimalistic, but for him it was exactly what he wanted to say. And some children just want to make sure you know how they feel about seals, and that's good too. And then we found as the children would move on to other tables and the table would quiet down, the adults would come over and actually the parents were making collages too. And I just love this one because for me it really describes how I feel every time I'm at one of these events. And I have the honor of facilitating all these community members of creating. And our events weren't very big. They topped out at about 40 participants, but compared to where we were last year, it was a really big change, which brings me to the impact of this grant. Like I said, we were mostly out of the trunk of my car last year. I actually got stopped and very politely interviewed by cops a couple times because they were concerned that my not so new looking car filled with boxes they thought I might be living out of it. And then I'd have to show them the boxes were full of yarn and things. And I just couldn't bring myself to lug it all back into the garage one more time. And while I did get very strong biceps from lugging all those boxes around, not having a space, the Channing Murray Foundation was kind enough last year to let us use some space free of charge, but we didn't really have much storage space. We had to tuck some of what we could there in a corner, and things went missing or got damaged, so I had to have a lot of it, just like I said, living in my car. We had to spend most of our art classes cleaning up and setting up because we couldn't really have anything established, and we couldn't do any crafts that were too messy or too noisy because of sharing the space. Well, this year, the workspace and the art show space was our main investment of the grant money, and it allowed us to take on much more ambitious projects, include much larger swaths of the community, get a level of visibility that allowed us to network with so many different organizations and people that now we have, before we really weren't sure what our next steps were, and now we have more leads than we can really cope with at a time for what we might do and who we might partner with. And I know that grubby picture of a sink may not seem very impressive, but last year we had to bring cups of water down and use a bucket to wash things. And just having a space with a sink, a real workspace, was so transformative. And then to be able to put this stuff on display in a professional setting where even our little note cards that we made as one of our paper crafts just felt so elevated, and we were able to have this art up for weeks to share with the community, it just expanded our scope by so much. So it's still a small program, but thanks to the grant money that you generously put in our custody, we were able to gain so much ground, and I'm really excited to see what we're able to achieve in the future. And I couldn't think of a better way than ending with the thank you that we had up at all of our events, letting people know who they had to thank for the programming and everything we were able to share with them this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments? Okay, I am just curious what steps you're going to take next, or if you know. The programming we're going to have this year is going to be some simple one-shot art meetups that are probably going to all be in collaboration with other groups like
the Fab Lab and the Makerspace, and we may even have an art meetup involved with the Pachacacha Nights. I was actually very grateful that I was able to talk about this program last year at a Pachacacha, and that's led to me getting involved with them. And we are reevaluating how we're doing our programming. We are looking for ways that we can have some more structured and regular kind of one-shot meetups at different locations. And we're going to see if we can find a space and warm bodies to help run it, to have scheduled classes during the school year, when, as we've talked to people at these events, we were able to find out that's really the time of year that they'd be willing to commit to a regular program. So, as you may have noticed, we did not apply for another grant this year because we're kind of in a very transformative phase. So we're going to put some programming out there, but right now we're also doing a lot of networking and making some plans for what we want to become, since thanks to this grant, we have so many possibilities at our fingertips.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our last presentation is going to be for the ACT UP Youth Theater.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maggie Thomas, and I'm the interim board president of the UP Center of Champaign County. And this is Megan Paisley. She's one of our founding board members and now serves as our most dedicated volunteer and works extensively with our youth program. So the ACT UP Youth Theater program falls under the umbrella of the UP Center. I hope some of you have heard of the UP Center before, but it's the local LGBTQ community center. It's housed over at the IMC, so here in Urbana. And the UP Center provides a wide range of services, programs, referral information, and events for the general public and for specifically the LGBTQ community. So throughout this last year, the Arts Commission has been supporting an ongoing bi-weekly theater program for LGBTQ youth, middle school and high school age youth, many of whom come from Urbana. And the program was designed to give our youth access to the tools and the resources of performance art, of theater, as a means to share their experiences, process their own experiences, connect with each other, and then share their experiences and their perceptions with the wider community. So the program was a bi-weekly sort of workshop group program. Where the youth learned techniques of theater making. We had, for instance, the Inner Voices social theater group from the University of Illinois come in and do a workshop on scene writing. So the youth learned some concrete performance art skills and then had the opportunity to really utilize those skills to tell some of their own stories through monologues, through scene writing, through poetry. Do you want to add anything else about the day-to-day programming? Okay. One of the huge supports the grant gave us in that ongoing programming was access to real stage space, so that the youth weren't sitting in the regular meeting room where they have their support and social groups, but instead got to be on the stage at the IMC having a theater experience. So that was a huge benefit to the program and to the youth participants of having the support of the Arts Commission. In addition to the workshops, which is really where the youth got to acquire the skills and to begin to practice the techniques of using performance art to, share their experiences, they put on two public performances. One took place last October as part of the LGBT Resource Center at the university's anniversary celebration. The youth were actually invited to come share monologues that they had written and that they performed collaboratively with the entire 250-person group who was there for dinner and celebration that night. And that was just a very important experience for the youth to be impacting their community by sharing the techniques they'd learned and sharing their own experience of performance art with a much wider community. part of the motivation for us to put this program together was to give the youth an opportunity to use performance art as activism, to be able to share their concerns about what was important for LGBTQ youth in this community with the wider community. And that's really where the performances were an important part of the program. We had an additional performance this spring, right in early April. It was April 5th, and that was actually a variety show which allowed youth who were participating in the group through visual art, photography, paintings, and drawings to also share their artistic experiences through the performance. So that was really what the program looked like this year, and the support of the commission allowed us to have that space for performances as well as for the workshops, and gave us the opportunity to, provide the youth participants with food while they were coming, and to really increase the youth we could reach out to. We had some youth engage in the program who'd never been participants in the Up Center's regular programming, which helped us see that being able to offer this particular art experience was an important way to increase the general community's access to this kind of performance experience. So we really appreciate the support of the commission and the grant. It really enabled this program to get off the ground, and we had a very successful year. So thank you very much.
I would just add one more thing. Hi, thank you. As Maggie talked about how we had kids that came that had never come to group before. One of the, I would say, equally as impactful moments for me was sitting in the theater groups and having kids who'd been coming for years, that had been coming to the support group for years, talk about things through their writing that they had never talked about in group before, that they were able to express those feelings in a way that they couldn't in the regular support group, or didn't for whatever reason. But through the process of writing poetry or monologues or putting scripts together with their peers, they were able to talk about experiences they'd had as LGBT youth that they hadn't talked about previously. So that was a huge impact, I thought, of the program.
We definitely saw those strengths of theater itself as a really crucial part of what the program was doing. So we appreciate the chance to do that.
Okay. Anybody have comments or questions? Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well now we'll have the presentation of the monthly progress report.
So this is the monthly progress report from April 9th through May 13th. The Martin Luther King Jr. Park project was dedicated on Saturday, April 19th at 4 o'clock. Preston Jackson was in attendance, and we had a wonderful reception at Cinema Gallery sponsored by Carolyn Baxley following the reception, and roughly about 45 people in attendance total, so it was a pretty good event. Urbana Arts Program, the remaining 2013 grant projects are, as you see, presenting their final reports, and while about 90% of the 2014 projects have their funds and are working on their projects. With Boneyard Creek, again, that's Mackie is working with the design team and engineers and the contractors on the last phase of the project, and that should be finished by August, September of this year. Fundraising, I had put that nothing new is to report on fundraising this time, but with the presentation that I had given to council for the program plan, it came up a couple times that they are very interested in the foundation model. So that's something that will probably come up in one of the subcommittees. So I wanted to mention that. With marketing, the grants program and the commission has been receiving a lot of press recently from the featured article that we had in the News Gazette about Preston and the press about the sculpture, along with the opening and build up to the Art in the Market. Downtown Arts, again, we're in the process of meeting for Boneyard events this summer to coincide with the opening and installation of the Mackie project. Annual planning, the 14-15 program plan motion was approved by council on May 5th, so that is good. Art Now, our May episode featured the Art in the Corridor artist from basically February, March, and April, Jason Patterson, and he was interviewed by Ginny, and that was a great episode, so thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Jenny for doing that. This was her first one.
Mm-hmm.
Take Barbara's place on the view.
So we have a new Artist of the Corridor exhibition up, and that opened on May 5th, and this is tree artwork from Prairie Elementary School and University Primary Schools. And this will be up through August 3rd. And Art of the Market, that has started. We had our first session on May 10th with a Suwanagashi printing workshop with Judy Lee, and then West African drumming and dancing. And these were, to my eye, amazingly successful. We probably had, I actually couldn't count them all, about 400 people total for the drumming, dancing, and the workshop. It was just an amazing attendance. Marketing is going along and growing, regularly updating Facebook and Twitter and our newsletter. And for grants, we are still waiting to find out what the response is from our Illinois Arts Council grant, and still looking for other grant opportunities. And as far as upcoming events, we have Art at the Market on June 14th with Klezmer Group, Don't Ask. That's the name of the group, not Don't Ask Me About It. And then we have a biodegradable art workshop. And also coming up on June 14th is our Urbana Wine Festival, put on by the UBA, and that's from 1 to 9 p.m.
Okay. Does anybody have any announcements before we come to a close? Okay. In that case, would someone like to move for adjournment?
Oh, Pat, I'm
sorry.
sorry. Some of you said we had some faulty CDs from the Aaron Amons project.
yeah. Mhm.
I have some repressed CDs, so anyone
Oh,
who
okay.
wants some of those, I have those here.
Okay, great.
And also, I have a card here to sign for Greg Chu.
Okay. Barbara brought some as well.
have a choice.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, Ginny.
I just want to say that I was at the city council meeting when Lisa and Pat presented the Arts Commission report, and they were the last ones at the council meeting.
Yeah, it was
So
pretty
I
late.
said goodnight, but they did a great job, and I was so happy to be a part of that. and hear
Well,
their
we
input.
appreciate your being there to support us.
It's really great.
Okay.
The last one on the roster, they're tired by then.
They still ask questions, though.
Oh, yes, they
Okay.
did. Okay, anyway, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we're done. Thank you.